Hello everyone, this is RJ Wellington, and today is Wednesday, December 29, 2021 in your Earth's calendar. And the title of this video is The Great Awakening Part 5, Intro to Mastering the Force. And to us in metaphysical science, the Force, pretty much as in Star Wars, is this energy, this infinite consciousness that permeates all universe and includes all. So to us, mastering the Force is basically expanding our individual consciousness more and more, to embrace more and more of this force into our lives. And in this video, I will be sharing some very mind-blowing information, to say the least. And even though it might be mind-blowing to the uninitiated, it is just the tip of the iceberg in true metaphysical teachings. It is actually one subject that I teach my students in their very first private training session with me. We shed light in this concept and how to use it. So I would call that to my students who get this thing the very first initiation they have in the path of metaphysics. And I usually tell them that our training is not too different from a Jedi Academy. Basically, they are learning the ways of the Force, somehow. Here, I will be introducing you to the construct or concept of choices and touching on parallel realities. I call it the power of choice. Why? Have you ever noticed that our experiences all are based on our choices? And every choice has a consequence, for good or for worst. It depends on the quality of your choice and where you make that choice from. And we will explain that here. So, some of my students at the beginning, they are very enthusiastic. And they ask me, how can I develop this or that power? How you think I'll be able to walk through walls, to levitate, to read other people's mind? And I tell them, in our very first interaction, the very first session, that the very first power that must be developed if you want to go anywhere is the power of choice. If you cannot crawl, you won't be able to walk, you won't be able to run. So again, I call it the power of choice. That is how important it is. Have you ever wondered, for example, what would have happened in my life or to my life if I did this instead of that? If I had married that person instead of this? If I had turned right instead of turning left, that tragic day when I got involved in a car crash and a loved one became paralyzed or even died, what would have happened? Would this person that I know, my loved one, have survived if he or she hadn't gone out that night when she was robbed and killed? So those are questions that are always in the mind of people that have to do so. They bring interpretations of destiny, karma, randomness, accidents. And that leads me to my childhood. I was always interested on this topic since I was a a toddler, basically. When I was very young in Brazil, there was this Marvel series that would be like, what if? What would have happened if? So one chapter that I never forget is a chapter of the comic book in which Peter Parker's aunt takes the bite from the spider instead of Peter Parker. Look at the picture. That is one cover, I think, for that magazine. And basically, Peter Parker, instead of being bitten by the spider at the lab, he took it home, and somehow the spider escaped and bit his aunt, and she became the Spider Lady. Okay? And those are things that make you think, right? What, happened there? How something so simple, his decision of taking the spider home, changed the whole history. I pretty much like you, and you can identify with that if you think back in your life. I will mention only two very important experiences that happened to me when I was still in high school. Is when I met my wife, which is still my wife up to this day. And that was another event like that. There was a party in our high school every year. They celebrate St. John's Day around July. I think it was July. And I was going to this party to meet someone else that I was communicating to through a friend. She was from another class, another time of classes. And my current wife, she had a boyfriend back then. And she was very disappointed because he didn't want to go to the party. He had something else to do. And she decided not to go. Then her mother convinced her to go to this party. And to make a long story short, there some reasons, some things happened, and we met. So I asked myself, what would have happened if I didn't go, or if she didn't go to that party? Our whole life could be totally different, right? Another example, it was, and this was recent, it was, a few years ago, like 5 or 6 years ago, we were at a street party called Brazilian Day Festival, in which I was a producer for a few years. And we were in a location in which we were basically below a tower that there was a cameraman on the top filming the celebration, the Brazilian celebrities, the singers in the stage. And we were there under that platform that should be like 10 feet, 12 feet high. And we both took a picture right there, below that. And we walked away, and I would say less than 1 minute, probably 30, 45 seconds, a huge piece of equipment fell down. The guy, in a neglecting way, he hit that piece, and it fell exactly in the place that we were under a few moments before. So, and I came home kind of traumatized by that, just thinking a few seconds would make a huge difference. What if he kicked that thing when we were under the platform? It would fall over one of our heads and at least break our neck, or my or her neck, and leave one of us paralyzed for the rest of our lives from the shoulder down, if it did not killed me. So, that makes you think and a metaphysicist is a student of life. Metaphysics is the science of life, is above all science and all philosophies. Okay? So, those experiences that I had, and you might have had similar experiences, for good or for bad. And I think the biggest question is, what make those things happen? How we make those choices of being in the right place at the right time or in the wrong place at the wrong time? What really drives our choices? How can we be sure if our choices will be good or bad? Do you think there is such a thing as accidents or randomness? That, the fact that me and my wife walked out of that platform a few seconds before a tragedy could happen, was it divine guidance? Was it coincidence? Was it just out of random in an accidental universe? What do you think? Honestly, have you ever stopped to think about these things at a deeper level? Well, one thing I can tell you for sure, your degree of free will and power over your life is represented by your capacity to make choices. And that's why I tell my students again, that is the very first power, pay attention, that you must develop to go anywhere else. Because again, your experiences are based on your choices. And every choice has a consequence. Are we clear so far? Okay, so here as we go along, I will present you with a few graphical representations to dive deeper into this concept of choices, free will, probabilities, outcomes, and take whatever you can take based on your level of consciousness. So let's look at this very first graphic in the screen. And there I show you a very simple, let's work on a binary level to begin with. Okay? Let's say that you are home and you have two choices. You have many choices, okay? If you were to count all the choices that you have, it would be way more than two. But let's work with the two choices to simplify and make it easy to understand. You are home and you have a choice. Either you go out of home or you stay home. Clear? That is your, I would call, the primary choice. Now this graphic gets a little more complex. Look at it. So, let's look at each one separatedly. You make the choice to go out. And when you make that choice to go out, you break it down in another subset of choices. You either walk around the block, or you decide to drive, to get your car and drive to town. Or, on the other side, you decide to stay home. And you either decide to sleep or stay awake. Now, when you decide to stay awake, you can decide to call a friend, to talk, to chat with a friend, or to go swimming at your pool. Let's say you're a rich person who has a pool in your backyard, okay? So far, all these choices are under your control, right? You can decide to go out or stay. You can decide to walk around the block or drive to town. You can decide if you stay home to sleep or to stay awake. And if you stay awake, you can decide to call a friend or swim at your swimming pool. Now let's see the next level. If you go on the left arm, If you go walk around the block, let's say there are two possibilities there. You enjoy the walk, you have an amazing walk, seeing the birds sing, the sunshine and everything else involved. Or you might also get mugged and hurt. Someone can attack you, steal your cell phone, your purse, and stab you. If you decide to drive to town, you can have a nice time going to the mall, eating something out at a restaurant, or on the way to town, you can die in a car crash or get paralyzed. On the other side, if you decided to stay home and you decided to call a friend, you can have good news, have a nice talk, a nice conversation, or you can have terrible news from that friend. And if you decide to go to the swimming pool and swim, you can have a nice time swimming, doing your exercise for a few minutes, enjoying the water, the sun, or you can drown and die. Pay attention to that chart. Okay, it's a kind of simplification, but it is very complex. Just that, what came out of two simple choices, to go out or to stay home. You see how many things, how many levels, how many layers, how many dimensions or parallels can branch out of that alone. Now let's look at a different representation of this chart. Most of you, anybody would agree that you have choices when it comes to deciding, do I go out or do I stay home? You have choices when you decide, if I go out, I'll be walking around the block, or I will drive to town. You have power over those choices. You can make those for yourself, right? On the other side, if you decide to stay home, you can decide to sleep or stay awake. And if you stay awake, you can decide to call a friend or swim at the pool. Up to that point, everybody, the awakening, the ones that are awakening, and the sleepwalkers agree. Oh yes, I have the power to decide if I call a friend or I don't. If I go to swim or I don't. I have the power over those choices. But now, when we get into that red area that you see, which is the level of the consequences of your choices, that's where people start disagreeing because they don't have the understanding or the right understanding, right? So, what defines really these outcomes in the red area? Do you think they are still choices at some level? Either if you enjoy your walk or you get mugged on your way. Either if you have a nice time driving to town, or if you die in a car crash. When you call a friend, either if you have great news, have a nice conversation, or if he gives you terrible news. And when you go to swim, either if you have a nice time swimming, you enjoy your exercise, or you drown and die. What do you think about that red level? The level, I would say, the level of consequences or outcomes based on your choices. What do you think? Again, there are many explanations in the construct, in the matrix. They talk about the karma, about destiny, about randomness, about living in an accidental universe in which you have limited choices and limited control, right? And again, That's what I always ask my students, that makes them expand their minds. What do you think? And now I will tell you two other stories, because there is nothing better than personal experience and empirical experience that you have through your life, okay? So pay attention to these two stories and hopefully you get my point. The first one, quite a few years ago, I'm talking about probably 20 years, when I was still seeing people in person for NLP, regression, counseling, and energy healing. I had a Brazilian lady, she was my client at that time, and she was very wealthy because she lived in New York, of course, and her husband left her a lot of money, so she was quite wealthy. But she was devastated because a few months before she lost her husband in a car crash. Okay? So I started talking to her. I know some Ericksonian, that what they call Ericksonian hypnosis is just an effective way of communicating to bring information out of someone's quote-unquote subconscious mind. And again, this woman was devastated because she lost her husband in a car crash. Pay attention, follow me. And when I started digging deeper into her so-called subconscious mind, she revealed to me that when she was young, she was around 7 or 8 years old, she had a very traumatic experience in which one of her aunts, her mother's sister, lost her husband. The guy, back then, died in a car crash. And she saw the suffering of her aunt, because the aunt went to her mother's house to stay there for a little bit, just to mourn and recover. And this little girl saw all that drama. The aunt crying every day. She went through the funeral. Okay. Fast forward, like 30 or 35 years later, she also told me, and now is where things get really exciting. She told me, my husband was always afraid of dying in a car crash. Okay? Again, since she was a child, she was afraid of losing a husband in an accident because she saw that when she was young. And her husband was afraid of dying in a car crash. That's what in metaphysics we call a perfect configuration. Two unities of consciousness getting together to experience what they have in consciousness. Are you getting the point? If not, another example. And this happened also. I know one case in Brazil, but I heard of other cases around the world. And this seems kind of comical, but it's tragical. There was this guy that he was terrified of flying in an airplane because he was afraid of dying in a plane crash. And he never did. He was in probably his 50s, and he never traveled through air. He never got into a plane because he was terrified of dying in a plane crash. Guess what happened when he was in probably his late 40s, early 50s? A small plane crashed over his house and killed him. He was killed in a plane crash. Now, would you say that now, look at that chart again, the red area, the consequences of choices. Do you think these two examples, The woman who lost her husband and the guy who died in a plane crash. Was it random? Was it accidental? What do you think? The problem is, most people say, oh, it was an accident, because they don't recall. Okay? Because random choices access your memory bank, sourcing from the past. It doesn't matter if you remember consciously or not. It's pretty much like the computer metaphor. Those programming codes, those line of codes are deep into your hard disk, let's say. So your RAM, your random access, your temporary memory cannot access that. But the moment 50 years ago that you were terrified about dying in a car crash, that data stayed stored. Now look again at the red area of the graphic. If you drive to town and you die in a car crash, no matter how good you are, no matter how religious you are, no matter how many affirmations you spit out every day, do you think that the accident was at random and that the law of attraction, that, the secret or positive thinking or metaphysics don't work because you die in a car crash no matter how many affirmations you did? What do you think? It is amazing, isn't it? Okay. So, whatever, the bottom line is this, folks. Whatever is in your so-called memory bank, which I would call part of your consciousness, whatever is in your consciousness, whether you are aware of it or not, when you are unawakened, when you don't know how to access and delete that information, it will drive your choices. You might make choices that have terrible consequences, because that's what some part of you expect. And food for thought. Would that be the concept of karma? What karma truly means? Choices that you make, sourcing from the past, even unconsciously, that puts you in a trouble situation. Do you see how deep the rabbit hole goes? And that is just basic information. Kindergarten metaphysics, to say the least. Now, let's say, bringing that to the current moment, and some people might tell me, but I don't have too many choices. My choices are limited. Well, guess what? The manipulators, what they call the cabal, to be, let's say, actual today in the language of the internet, they know all about human consciousness, human psychology, and the weakness of the human mind that is not awakened, that don't know these things. So these manipulators, they are very good at this. They are masters at controlling your perception of choices. Because there are only two types of choices at a level, talking again about the binary, option. You can make choices that restrict you or that help you to expand. And some people, especially through the media, which is their main vehicle of manipulation, they make you think that you have no choices, that you are a victim of randomness, of accidents, while they are in control of their choices, and that's why they are where they are. They are applying universal principles which are neutral, And you might be allowing them by playing their games. Think about that. And now let's look at the final graphical chart here that I call choice categories. And that's another thing that is, I would say, is exclusive from my way of teaching metaphysics. So look at this chart. So I would call them choice categories. So CC means choice category. So number 1, what is your basic level of choices? Thinking and feeling, which means controlling your states. You can choose what to think, right? If you say no, you are being controlled by someone else. And you can choose how you feel. You can choose your emotions. For example, if you are thinking of a bad thing that happened to you yesterday and feel depressed, it could be easy just to say, I want to think about something else and I will feel a positive vibration, if you will. So you have that choice. Thinking and feeling is your first level of choices, or the first category. Category 1. Category 2 are your actions and reactions. So again, you can decide to walk. If you are now in your living room, you can decide to walk to your bedroom, right? It is a type of action as well. You can decide if someone curses you. You can decide how to react. They all together, all categories work together. But I'm breaking down in a linear way to make it easy for you to understand. So depending on how you choose to react to someone's offensive approach, you have different consequences. If someone curses you, you can just smile and walk away, or you can punch that person in the face. If you punch that person in the face, you may go to jail, or he can stab you and kill you, right? So you are in control of those choices. And choice category number 3, your environment, your location. So again, you can decide to be in any room in your house, you can decide to go out, you can decide to visit another neighborhood, to move into a neighborhood, or you can decide to move from, for example, New York to Wyoming, or to Florida, or Kentucky, right? So those are the 3 categories that you think you have total control. Now, there is a dividing line there, what I like to call the threshold, the point between what they call now normies, or the sheeple, or the sleeping walkers. That fine red line that you see takes us to other levels of choices that most people don't know they can have control over. So, choice category number 4 is the parallel reality experienced, because we live in a multiverse with infinite possibilities and probabilities. Those are the parallel realities. As Jesus said, in my Father's house there are many mansions. I will go and prepare a place for you. Most probably because he was initiated. Most probably he was talking about this level, parallel realities experienced. And that is the level that I teach my students only, in which you can control your aging process, in which you can rejuvenate, in which you can change your physical body, and if you wish, eventually even experience immortality. Okay? So that is a level of magic. When you know that you are in charge of the parallel reality that you wish to experience. whatever it is. And level 5, or choice category number 5, has to do with the collective reality experienced. That is a topic that I share also with my students about the consensual reality. So I ask you, is everybody seeing the same thing that you see in your reality because there is only one reality? Or are they seeing things as you see because you are in that parallel reality in which they agree with you, for better or for worse? So again, food for thought. I'm giving you the basics, an idea of what I share, what I teach, and I give you the formulas. Of course, the process is for people to experience that in their life. It's not just about think positive and be happy. That is below kindergarten from our level of, I would say, consciousness. Okay, so again, the categories, thinking and feeling. And you can start doing that right now. I will give you some basic processes. Ask yourself, how do I want to think, to feel right now? What do I want to think to feel better? Actions. What can I do to improve my life, to improve my business, to make more money, or to find the right person? What are the actions that I have to take that I am not taking? Otherwise, I would have those things. Environment, location, where I want to be. Which place makes me feel better? And below the red line are very metaphysical, advanced ways with the processes that lead you there. Okay, but I just want to let you know, there are these probabilities. You can choose your parallel reality. You don't have to live on someone else's or a collective, a consensual reality that tells you who you are. As they say in the very first Matrix, the Matrix cannot tell you who you are. Clear? And then, to wrap this up, there is a concept that we call in metaphysics meta states. Okay? And these meta states, I would say you polarize yourself in a state in which all your choices produce the results or the consequences that you are aiming for, you in your personal reality. Okay? And there are two sets. I will give you two basic sets of meta states. The first one, fear versus courage. So, for example, the Brazilian lady I told you who lost her husband, unconsciously or subconsciously, she lived all her life in the meta state of fear when it comes to a personal relationship. Some people live in the meta state of fear, of lack, and they experience poverty all their lives. That is enough for this. In another set of meta states, the victim mentality, in which you are victim of your reality, of the government, of the medical system, you are victim of randomness, karma, destiny, whatever else you want to throw into that dirty bag. And that is the participator mentality, in which I'm participating. I'm an active participator in my reality, and I have a say in there. I don't care what anybody is going through. I don't give a damn about what anybody is going through at this point. But my first step to freedom is to free myself. Because if I don't know how to swim, I cannot save anybody who is drowning. Otherwise, we're both gonna die. Okay? So fear versus courage. And the victim mentality versus the participator mentality. Those are what we call meta states that influence your micro choices and give the consequences in your life. So now, You might ask me, okay, that's very nice. So what I do? What should I do? Well, I'm not going to teach you what I teach my private students because they earn it. But I give a lot of things. I gave you freely the very first process that I teach my students to get out of this loop. Is the Meta Affirmation course. It's a free course. I think it's close to 2 hours of audio or 1 hour. I don't know. I don't remember. In a book on the Meta Affirmation. That is a very basic tool to get you into a meta state of positivity, a meta frequency that will make you feel better. Now, if you are not using this, or if you didn't have the interest to download, that's your problem, and that is a choice that you make. It might mean that there is a part of you that says, no, I don't want to to step further. I don't want to go there yet. It doesn't matter to us. We love you regardless. Okay? But if you want a process, go to my website through metaphysics.com. You can download the Meta Affirmation program. I swear to you, that is a Maha mantra. One of the most powerful mantras you can do in your life to get into a meta state of courage, of being a participator, and of your life getting better and better. Okay? And we have many other processes. One of them, I would say the most important is the parallel self, the perfect self, which I also share, which overrides all meta states. I literally show you how to jump into a parallel reality in which you don't have to worry about a past meta state. Okay, but I'm just giving you choices. Again, you can find information, you can find your own way, your own path, okay? I'm not trying to sell you anything. I don't need it to, okay? So basically, I would say that metaphysics gives you the keys to self-mastery and mastering your reality. Even what you have thought of your destiny, that you couldn't control, of accidents, of randomness, of karma. And that is the message I want to leave with you for this new year, okay? Make the choice of taking control of your life, of learning more, of talking to people who lift you up instead of people who pull you down. Make the choice of mastering yourself, of taking the red pill, this freaking red pill, and unplugging from the matrix. And you see, nothing that happens out there will affect you. You'll be an untouchable like me and my students are. I think I have said enough. This is a very important video. Watch it over and over again if you can, if you like it. And Happy New Year. I wish you the best from the bottom of my heart. May the force be with you. Always.